Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We're focusing in a little bit more in depth on the manipulation tool that is utilized by personality disordered individuals who we're calling narcissistic and psychopathic, those individuals who utilize the tools of emotional manipulation and deception to overpower, take control, and furthermore inferiorate and inferiorize those individuals with whom they seek to target. Now, it's very interesting to understand that the word deceive comes from the mid-1200s. The Middle English deceiven and the Old French deceiver, the Latin decipere, literally to ensnare. And the equivalent placere, combining from or capere, means to take. So it's literally to take and ensnare. So that is the root word of deception. I'm very fascinated by the origin of words and especially how they evolve over time. So it's very important also to understand the meaning of deception and how this impacts you as an individual who is in quarters or has had a relationship or encountered an individual who is narcissistic or psychopathic. An individual who has a pathological self-importance, an individual who has an empathy deficit, someone who does not understand the feelings, needs, wishes, desires of another, and furthermore proceeds to pursue their selfish needs to the detriment and exploitation and hurting of others. If you'll notice, the individuals who are narcissistic and psychopathic make their way by exploiting others. So if they are to advance, it's generally at another's cost. Someone else is paying the price for them. And if you look at that, you have to ask yourself, have I put up with enough? Have I paid the price for this individual long enough? And to realize that the deception basically is a facade from a narcissist or a psychopath. It is a front. You can hear about them acting like the good boy, the good girl. They're put on their best face, things of that nature. But really, when you talk about a narcissist or a psychopath, it is all an act. And then when you try to, once you know them a little bit more intimately, you'll realize that there's very much a different person, which you see in their private life to their quote-unquote public life. So the mask that they present will be in a certain way, but yet what they really have going on underneath oftentimes is very different. There's a big disparity or divide between the mask and then how they really feel and what they really do, such as the triangulation. They're talking about people behind their back. You figure out that they're doing this, but then to your face, da 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 da. I mean, it's really a facade, and a facade is basically a showy misrepresentation intended to conceal or hide something unpleasant. So a good question to ask yourself when you're emerging from and figuring out how to go no contact, how to stay no contact, you can ask, how have I been supporting this? How have I been encouraging this? Or basically, how have I been allowing this to occur? Because if you have allowed yourself to be victimized, it's time to say no. It's time to say enough is enough. And the deception is very difficult to pinpoint, but once you've been with it long enough, you know really what is going on because of the hurt that you feel, because of the things that are said, the things that are done, the lies that you've exposed, the double lives that you have exposed within this individual. You have realized that it's all basically what we call a deception. And you also have to ask, have I been paying the price for their advancement? So if it's not just about being supportive, but have you suffered so much for them to the point that it no longer makes sense for you to be with them? Have they insulted you enough? Have they berated you enough? I mean, is it a time to cut the relationship off? And if you're someone who basically had a vision of them being in your life, for the rest of your life, that is your vision, but you have to make an adjustment. You have to realize it's time for me to understand that there are some individuals who I can't keep in my inner circle. They are not in my best interest. They are not worthwhile for me to be around. They are abusive. They are what they are, as much as that might be difficult to accept. it's important to accept and accept it now, because if you allow it to fester, if you live in denial, it only gets worse, and it only gets more difficult to let them go. And also, am I reacting or replaying a scenario from earlier in my life that is keeping this person stuck? So in other words, if you have this set up as a role that's kind of automatically part of your identity, and you're now constantly attracting these abusers, violators, and perpetrators in your life, it's very much time to address the original issue and realize that perhaps you are now living in reaction to this pathological individual from earlier in your life, and you're perpetuating that habitually as part of your identity. So you need to do the old tabula rasa. Say, okay, that blueprint is no longer working. I'm now going to redesign really kind of my perspective of myself and how I relate to others. And that really, it's time to reset the buttons, and that, me sabotaging myself isn't in my best interest, and it's not going to get me to where I need to be. And I don't need to feel alive by engulfing myself in these painful, abusive relationships in order to feel something in my life. Oftentimes, these abusive relationships are addictive and cause a distortion of reality, and then it can get so very difficult that it can become crippling. And that's when you have to go no contact, cold turkey with these individuals, and really raise your awareness and your understanding. Furthermore on this topic, when you continue to ask yourself these questions, you will get an answer. So if you continue to ask, you will get that answer, and then you need to live in the solution. What I'm going to basically just call, you need to live in the solution. Stop living in the problem. You need, it's very time to heal something here and get it done. And have you basically, I think the real goal, the lesson learned, is to bring your self-confidence to a new level. And even though it feels uncomfortable, it feels new, it contradicts your struggle. This contradicts everything I've been in my past. That's a big step. It's like the metamorphosis, it's becoming a whole new you. It's having a whole new outlook. It's a 360, it's a 180, it's a whatever, it's a turnaround. It's a radical change. It's time to do this, and you absolutely can. Absolutely can. And this oftentimes is when your self-confidence and kind of your inner life takes a whole new experience, where you realize that, this old blueprint is like the old house. This is the shanty. I'm not living there anymore. That's no longer the design, and that's no longer the viewpoint perspective that I'm looking at. I'm now redesigning my blueprint, my perspective, my feeling about myself and life, which is now true and no longer mirrored back to me from the deception of a pathological, wounded individual. Because remember, wounded people wound, healed people heal. So when you stay around these wounded people, you're going to get shards of woundedness on you, and it's going to become part of your thought process. It's going to be part of your emotional body. It's going to be part of your physical body. You're going to get the physical illnesses. You're taking that in. We're human beings, but there's a lot of energy going around between people. And I don't think, unless, people don't really understand that, and you don't realize that impacts you on this deep level, and it impacts the direction and projection and trajectory for your life and where you're headed. So it's very important to become acknowledged of that, reboot that, and reset that. And basically, and it's a transcending now to embracing your strength versus the flawed, deceptive projection that wounded individual was reflecting back to you. And so as you get a grip on this, you get a handle, you start to begin to feel very solid. And I'm also calling this, basically it's like unblocking, because the wounded individual is like a block. It's like a foot trying to trip you up. It's just like a constant foot. They're going to try to trip you up. They're always going to have something out there, just trying to mess you up, sabotage you. You're like the counterforce to their force. You don't want to do that. You want to hold your own ground, hold your own assertiveness now, and learn to really stop it in its tracks. So assertive statements that I think is very important for you to understand, not only in your heart but in your mind, is that your force doesn't fly here. Your false accusations are just that, they're false. Making declarative statements where it puts it back to that individual and it's not part of your inner being, because hitherto, when you were quote unquote, naive, weaker, uninformed about this, you had just absorbed all this negativity and you had really caused to become part of your operating system, your psychology, your belief of yourself, and impacts your career choice, your family choice, how you dress. I mean, it impacts all areas of your life, what you eat, how you sleep, where you live. I mean, it impacts all areas of your life. So it's time to give yourself permission to kind of re-engage that and reposition your perspective according to what you value, and like live in that. And always kind of like live with gratitude. I think if you can, I know it's a learning process, but gratitude is one of the really most powerful emotions. So if you can just sit for a moment and have gratitude, even for the littlest of things that you have in your life, it'll really open up. Get back to the basics. I'm so grateful to have this. I'm so grateful to live here. I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for that. Begin, listing things. List 20 things that you have gratitude for, and really reflect on that. When you're feeling really overwhelmed and abused, come back to gratitude and come back to that inner life and not their life, because that's the life of the deceiver. That's the life of the manipulator. That's the life of the narcissist and psychopath, and that has nothing to do with reality. That has everything to do with their emotional violation. It has nothing to do with your truth. And that's why you have to go no contact. It doesn't make logical sense, but you have to. It is a big, big lesson, especially if you're one of those, inclusive type people, supportive type people, you believe in including people. It goes against, what you inherently want, but you have to kind of make those adjustments and changes according to reality, and this is what reality is calling for. And I'm going to proceed with other videos here on some very important questions that you can then begin to help ask yourself and liberate, and really kind of get your eyes open and your heart open to a much better, fulfilling future for yourself beyond that of the victimizer. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.